Sarmaaya Financials, Daraz, welcome back to the 393rd episode of Thought Behind Things. Today is the 22nd of December 2023 and आज हमारे साथ मौजूद है Raza Matin, who is the founder of PayPro, Brandverse, Chikoo, and previously वो Google में थे and he was instrumental in getting YouTube unblocked in Pakistan. आज की कॉन्वर्सेशन बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. एक तो ये कि पाकिस्तान में जो आजकल सेंटिमेंट है ऑफ बिजनेस, ऑफ इकोनॉमी, ऑफ स्टार्टअप्स, तो उसके ऊपर आई वांटेड टू अंडरस्टैंड बिकॉज अल्हम्दुलिल्लाह ही इज़ डूइंग वेल एंड दे रिसेंटली हैड अ वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग एंड फैसिनेटिंग अनाउंसमेंट एज वेल. तो जहाँ पर बहुत सारी स्टार्टअप्स जो हैं वो रैप अप कर रही हैं, वो MLAs की तरफ जा रही हैं. यहाँ पर एक एक्चुअली स्टार्टअप है जो कि कोर प्रॉब्लम के ऊपर फोकस करके देर एक्चुअली स्टेडीली ग्रोइंग. इनकी रिसेंटली बैंक एंड फुला के साथ एक अनाउंसमेंट भी आई थी. वी स्पोक अबाउट दैट एज वेल. अनफॉर्चुनेटली वी did not have enough time. He had to go to another meeting. तो मैंने तो इनसे 3-3.5 घंटा कहीं नहीं जाना था. Conversation plan की भी थी, but we had to cut it short. I would like to apologize because मैंने realize नहीं किया, but मेरा जो कैमरा था it was not recording or it was recording. We'll see कि इसको किस तरीके से हम fix करते हैं. So there is a significant part for an hour जिसमें जो मेरी footage है वो थोड़ी सी missing होगी या अजीब होगी. तो I do apologize for that, but largely because the guest was speaking and that footage is there. So इशू होना नहीं चाहिए. अगर आप चैनल पे नए हैं तो सब्सक्राइब करना मत भूलिएगा. अगर आप पुराने हैं तो वीडियो को लाइक करना मत भूलिएगा. इट रियली हेल्प्स द एल्गोरिथम. अगर आपके कोई थॉट्स हैं तो हमें कमेंट सेक्शन में ज़रूर आके बताएं. आई रीड ऑल द कमेंट्स. इट रियली हेल्प्स मी इंप्रूव द क्वालिटी ऑफ द कॉन्वर्सेशन. अगर आप ओवरसीज पाकिस्तानी हैं तो नीचे लिंक के ऊपर क्लिक करके आप हमें सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं थ्रू स्ट्राइप एंड हेल्प अस रिमेन independent for as long as possible. But anyways, this is Raza Matin on TBT Go, Dubai Studio. Raza, how are you?
Doing well.
Thank you for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
मुझे पहले तो थोड़ा सा बताइएगा, just to start off, where were you born and early life आपने कहाँ पे गुजारी?
Born right here in Dubai.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. Spent the first 6 years of my life in Dubai, then moved across to Oman. Mm-hmm. Spent the next 11, 12 years there. Moved across to Canada at the age of 17 or 18 and university there. So started right here, just down the road.
So you've never really lived in Pakistan long enough until you actually ended up there a few years ago.
Absolutely. I moved to Pakistan. I didn't move back.
Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Was this because your father was working in a sort of an MNC, moving around consistently, or were you guys just hopping jobs or?
No, I grew up a very privileged life. My father was a accountant, chartered accountant with one of the large firms in the Middle East. He led the practice across the region. So we sort of grew up here, very comfortable, very safe, very insulated as it happens in this part of the world. And then, moved to Canada when he sort of retired.
Right. क्योंकि अब मेरा अपना एक 2.5 साल का बेटा है और मैं बड़ा उसके बारे में सोचता हूँ कि यार अगली जनरेशन है तो पाकिस्तानी, बट ग्रोइंग अप आउटसाइड ऑफ पाकिस्तान उसके बहुत सारे फ़वाइद हैं. यू आर इंटरेक्टिंग विद अ लॉट ऑफ डिफरेंट नेशनैलिटीज़, अ लॉट ऑफ डिफरेंट कल्चर्स. बट इफ़ आई वुड टू आस्क यू, आपका जो पाकिस्तान के साथ रिलेशनशिप था ग्रोइंग अप, व्हाट वाज दैट लाइक? Knowing that you are inherently a Pakistani, I'm assuming कि शादियों वगैरह पे तो आप आते होंगे family की.
Yeah, I mean, during the summers, grandparents, spending time here with cousins, etc. and whatnot. So, at least a couple of times a year we were in Pakistan, if not more.
So what was the relationship like?
Distant, I think. I don't think if you actually ever live here, you get a true appreciation for the nuances and you build that strong relationship with the culture, the people, the cities. I think, when I finally did move to Pakistan, in the mid-2010s, etc. and whatnot, that was when I actually started really building a deeper relationship with the country and the people and the culture. I think people overstate your connectivity with a country based on these small interactions or these short interactions. I don't think you truly build that part of the identity. I think, because our parents are Pakistani, because they grew up here, because we speak the language, because we eat the food, the cultural component is there. I think that gets inculcated. But do we really think of ourselves as Pakistani? at that age, or one who we share a lot of commonality with the average Pakistani? No, absolutely not. Not especially if you grew up outside of Pakistan like we did.
Interesting. So 2010 में you said you moved to Pakistan.
2012.
2012. Why did that happen? बल्कि उससे पहले, where did you go for your university?
Queen's University in Kingston, Ontario. Yeah, Canada.
And what did you pursue?
Economics.
Acha.
Yeah, everyone would have always thought that I'd pursued a technology-related degree, but no. High school had a great economics teacher, fell in love with the subject. By the third year of university, fell out of love with the subject, but finished it nonetheless. But
and what year was this?
The year I graduated, class of 2005 or 6, I want to think.
Right.
Something like that.
And so where did you work? Straight up.
So right after university, I was sort of pulled back to, shortly after that, I sort of came back to Pakistan. My father and my mother had moved back to Pakistan. They wanted to spend their golden years in the country as they'd gotten older. As he said, I think, you want to be there to be able to wipe the tears of your brothers and sisters, et cetera, and whatnot, especially when they've lived most of their adult life outside of Pakistan. So they got into a couple of things. They started, my father started a technology venture. A year later, I got a call for help that you need to come and help. So I sort of moved across to Pakistan, spent a bit of time here. Didn't really work out that well. I couldn't really find myself compatible with the Pakistani way of working. So I ended up going back to Canada. Ended up getting into project management, worked in retail project management, setting up sort of facilities and projects across the country in Canada. And then, the call to come back home became very strong. So with aging parents, that's often the case. So I came back to Pakistan. So more or less since then, been in Pakistan since pretty much 2012.
And what did you do when you came back? Did you come back with a plan, or did you just come back and were like, dekhi jayegi, kya hota hai?
No, I think, look, the work that I had started earlier when I was here, that company had sort of moved on a little bit. It had changed course at that point in time. We created a Fintech. That Fintech today is known as PayPro. It's a payments company in Pakistan. Did that for a while. But then sort of got bored with that, went and did the Google thing for a while, in starting, I think, more or less 2015, I want to say.
What was that?
I was the country consultant representative for Google in Pakistan for the better part of 5 years.
Okay. What does that entail?
Taking care of things in Pakistan.
Okay.
Making things
sales related mostly, a policy and everything?
A little bit of, I'd like to say a little bit of everything.
Okay.
Right. So supporting the
2015
sales
was a year before YouTube got unbanned.
Yeah, we're part of that effort, bringing YouTube back. It's one of my finer contributions to the country.
What was happening at the time with YouTube? दुनिया भर में टेक्नोलॉजी बहुत इवॉल्व कर चुकी है. अब आप घर बैठे एक मोबाइल फ़ोन से पूरी दुनिया में किसी किस्म की भी डिफरेंट एसेट्स, स्टॉक्स या इवन क्रिप्टो करेंसीज ख़रीद सकते हैं. जहाँ पर ये टेक्नोलॉजिकल एवोल्यूशन आया, वहाँ पे भी अनफॉर्चुनेटली हालात ऐसे हैं कि इकॉनमी एक ऐसी जगह पर पहुँची हुई है कि बड़े आजकल बुरे हालात हैं. इन्फ्लेशन बहुत ज़्यादा बढ़ रही है, सेविंग्स हमारी डिप्लीट हो रही हैं. ज़्यादातर लोग इन्वेस्टमेंट्स करते ही नहीं हैं, और जो करते भी हैं वो 90% लॉसेज अनफॉर्चुनेटली बनाते हैं. इसी प्रॉब्लम को सॉल्व कर रहा है Sarmaaya.pk, जो कि अपने फाइनेंशियल ट्रेडिंग प्लेटफॉर्म्स पे ट्रेनिंग्स भी ऑफर करता है और डेटा भी ऑफर करता है, जिससे आप पूरी दुनिया की मार्केट्स, खासकर पाकिस्तानी मार्केट्स को बआसानी देख सकते हैं. अगर आप लोग अपनी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स और ट्रेडिंग में स्ट्रगल कर रहे हैं तो आई वुड डेफिनेटली अर्ज यू टू चेक आउट Sarmaaya Financials प्लेटफॉर्म. इट्स अ रिमार्केबल प्लेस जहाँ पर आपको बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग रिपोर्ट्स के थ्रू डेटा भी मिलता है, इन्वेस्टमेंट की एडवाइस भी मिलती है, और ख़ासकर उनकी ट्रेनिंग्स जहाँ पर उनके एक्सपर्ट्स जो हैं वो आपको क्रिप्टो और स्टॉक मार्केट और कमोडिटीज़ और एसेट्स के अंदर ट्रेड करके पैसे कमाना सिखाते हैं. सो चेक आउट द प्लेटफॉर्म एंड चेक आउट देयर ट्रेनिंग्स. नाउ बैक टू द पॉडकास्ट.
It's an interesting issue. We were sort of at a stalemate situation. And when I say we, when I'm talking about Google, where, the government of Pakistan was unwilling to bend on their request that they have oversight on the content in Pakistan.
Okay. And the idea was that they can remove any content as they wish?
That's correct.
Right.
For them to have discretion over it.
Right.
Effectively to be able to curate the content that Pakistan sees, and potentially even take down content that Pakistan feels is offensive at a global level.
Right.
So no one would be able to see it. Obviously, this was incompatible with the values of Google and the policies there. Google did have a policy of creating lenses for countries where certain content is made unavailable in certain parts of the world based on social nuances, cultural acceptability, et cetera, and whatnot, which they do in this part of the world as well and whatnot. But at the time that I joined, Google was and the government of Pakistan were at a bit of a stalemate. Neither one was willing to budge and get to the point in the conversation required where a solution could be hammered out. On the government side, what they didn't want to be seen doing is kowtowing to the likes of Google, and certainly no one in the government wanted to be seen as giving Google permission to sort of do as they wish, right? I mean, that was a very politically unfavorable decision, especially given the circumstances in which YouTube was banned in the first place. So, it was interesting times, right? At that point in time, we didn't have YouTube ads or that you could.
We didn't even realize the potential of what could happen with that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We had no idea.
And so how did it eventually get resolved?
It's interesting. It's interesting. It's an interesting story. But what I can tell you is, the way we did it is we were able to push internally, and a lot of credit nearly entirely goes to Tanya, who's very famous, as you know, for making this happen. But the way we ended up doing it is we had to really make the case internally at Google to proactively provide lensing to Pakistan, localization, which is what you see today when you sort of go into Pakistan. You see a specific set of content that's deemed culturally acceptable, and where changes and edits can be made by the government according to Google policy.
But for within Pakistan only.
For within Pakistan, right? But to bring that to the table, there was a tremendous amount of internal machinery that had to move to even make that a possibility. And what Tanya and the rest of the team, including myself, did was we had to first sell Pakistan. We had to sell it internally at the highest levels, that this massive effort, and it's not just a matter of flipping on a switch or anything along those lines, right? It's actually a engineering effort. It's a product decision. There are many layers, many stakeholders that need to be placated before something like this can happen. We had to make that case that this is something that should happen, and we did. And the way we did it is there's only so much we can show of Pakistan on a slide deck, right? And what we ended up doing was bringing key leadership of Google to Pakistan, doing a wonderful 4-day trip across Pakistan, whirlwind, whistle-stop tour, meeting everyone from folks at the government to titans of the business industry to creative artists like yourself and students and entrepreneurs and startups, and really helping them understand that Pakistan was worth taking this internal fight on for, and that there was reason to do so. And not just commercial, that, at the end of the day, Pakistanis deserved the opportunity to learn and benefit from things like YouTube, just like everyone else. And if that required a little bit of leniency or a little bit of flexibility internally, that it was worth fighting for. And we did, and we got it. And, I think I have that newspaper article framed somewhere inside my home, right? October, I think it was sometime in October that officially, YouTube was unbanned.
And in terms of, आपने उस टाइम पे बेचा, probably slides बनाई होंगी, कुछ ना कुछ वो किया होगा. How important do you think Pakistan is for YouTube, but rather अगर मैं इसको wider करूँ, for the global tech platform industry, if that makes sense? What I'm trying to understand is, we hear about this, we're the 5th largest country in the world, huge numbers of people online, so on and so forth. ऑन अ सिंपलर वो तो जाहिर है, अगर मैं रॉ नंबर पे देखूँ तो बहुत एक इम्पॉर्टेंट पोटेंशियली इम्पॉर्टेंट मार्केट अपीयर होती है, बट जाहिर है उसमें ये एलिमेंट भी है कि उसमें से जो लोग कनेक्टेड हैं वो 3 रुपये पर डे के हिसाब से कि इंटरनेट के ऊपर तो हैं, लेकिन क्या वो उसकी इकोनॉमिक्स में आते हैं, क्या उनको एड सर्व हो सकते हैं, क्या एक्चुअल पैसा ड्राइव हो रहा है, या यूर लाइक अ, क्योंकि एवरी टाइम यूर वॉचिंग अ वीडियो एसेंशियली योर Google is losing money, right? AWS का या जिसका भी क्लाउड का. So are you one of those के नंबर तो बहुत बड़ा है but you're not really valuable audience for any platform for that matter?
So, interestingly enough, that narrative, the 240 million people, one of the youngest populations in the world, one of the lowest median ages in the world, highly connected or increasingly connected population, high proficiency in English relative to a lot of other markets. That narrative was unashamedly created by myself and my colleagues at Google when we were trying to sell Pakistan internally to get a lot of our product issues and challenges sorted. So there are a few common folks that we know that sort of were a part of that. And that narrative just sort of propagated itself. The more it was shown, etc. and whatnot, it became part of folklore. But, the numbers are not everything, right? And numbers can be shaped to suit a particular narrative. And I have no shame in saying that we did it for what we needed to do at the time, which was to sell the potential of Pakistan. Now, one part of it is the potential of Pakistan. One is the realizable potential of Pakistan. The reality is, yes, we have 240 million people, but we also have 240 million people who are largely with a low level of education, average level of education, a low level of disposable income, at a wholesale level, low level of actual consistent connectivity. That's not as attractive as when you just say 240 million people, right? So the reality is we have a large connected young population that has disposable income. And that number is a subset of 240 million people. Let's say about 50, 60. That's not a small population. That's the size of the UK, right? So it is absolutely a market worthwhile going after, but it's not a 240 million market either, right? So the market's actually a lot smaller. The challenge that we have, and the challenge that Pakistan faces, is that it's 60 million people amongst 240 million people, right? It's and that those 240 million people are across a very large geographic area, across many different cities with many different cultural nuances, etc. So it's not as easy as launching a product or a service in Pakistan and just because it's useful that it'll catch fire. The challenges of distribution, sales, and marketing are very complex in Pakistan because of the fabric of the country and the way it's done. So, yes, is the opportunity there? Absolutely. Is it as large as we would like to think or others would have us think? No. Is it realizable? Is it something we can take advantage of? Absolutely. Why not?
Interesting. You left in 2020, that Google position.
Yeah, something like that.
Right? Why did you leave?
Desire to do something more substantial. At a personal level, I think, maybe you have those moments, and maybe COVID was one of those moments where it made you think that if you were to die and people were to look back on your life, what would they say about you? Like, what have you accomplished? Have you left footprints in the sand or have you left mountains? Right? And I was very clear that I did not want my life to be a bunch of reports or some advertising sales numbers or something like that. It had to be much more substantial. And, the appreciation I'd gained from my time at Google was that you can be ambitious. You can think 10x, right? You can be crazy in terms of ideation. And, you match that with the ability to execute, and you can maybe make some great things happen. From my previous life working in technology, I'd also seen, and even at Google, I'd seen that technology has a very real ability to uplift not just economically, but socially and otherwise the lives of people. So, I sort of struggled with the idea that technology was only for the big banks or the big IT companies or large enterprises of this world. That I fundamentally believe that every business deserves the chance to be a better business, right? And that's sort of the mission I sort of ran after. And I credit Google for a lot of that thinking, right, about how digital tools can actually help drive growth. And you don't have to have a parasitic relationship with technology, right? You can actually have a beneficial relationship with technology. And how do we make that happen for Pakistan?
Explain that thought. Parasitic relationship versus beneficial relationship.
So it's interesting, right? Go to a retailer today, and he will have this credit card machine that sits on his counter, right? Ask him how much that credit card machine costs, right? In his business, he'll say 1.6%, 1.8%. That's what it costs me to process a transaction. Ask him what he gets in return. He'd be like, I get the money in my account 2 days later, right? So it cost him 1.8% of a transaction to get the money 2 days later. And ask him what was the benefit of all of this. He would say, I don't know, right? But what has it actually solved for him? He's not sure, right? So to me, technology positioned in that fashion is parasitic, right? It's not actually value additive to that merchant, right? How can we use technology in a way to get that customer or get that merchant more growth? How can we help him find new customers? How can we increase the average sale to his customers? How can we increase his profitability? How can we make sure he loses less money on certain transactions or less on inventory, right? These are things that technology can do, right? And because of that, technology can actually be a force of uplift for businesses, right? Or it doesn't have to be parasitic. But then that brings about the question, why hasn't it been done yet? Why aren't more businesses using technology? And that's the problem I set out to solve.
What was that problem? So 2020, you leave Google and you started Brandverse straight up?
Yeah, more or less. I actually had started it while I was at Google. So I was literally doing my startup and I was doing my work at Google at the same time. So doing two jobs, burning the candle on both sides.
Tell me about Brandverse. And it's not just Brandverse. You spoke about PayPro, then there's Brandverse, and then there's Chikoo, right? So अगर आप तीनों को explain कर सकें कि what are all these things that you do and how do they connect really, because they're theoretically in three very different areas, and it's एक manage करना मुश्किल होता है, तीन कैसे manage हो रहे?
Sure. Let's talk about PayPro first because that sequentially came first, right? So PayPro is really interesting in the sense that when I moved to Pakistan, more or less the second time, or maybe even a little bit earlier, I was amazed at the fact that we were constantly still using cash, right? I was paying my bills in cash, by check, etc. and whatnot. It's like there's got to be a better way to be able to pay our bills digitally. I mean, we did everything in Canada digitally, right? You paid, you even send money over email, right? Why can't we do the same thing in Pakistan? So we realized that the rails existed, right? The issue was that no one had really taken those rails and turned them into a business solution to enable others to accept digital payments. So what we created with PayPro was effectively digital invoicing and digital payment. So whether it's paying your school bills, whether it's paying your water bill, your electricity bill, or anything else, PayPro takes a bill from a merchant or a business, sends it to a consumer, gives them the option to pay for it digitally, and facilitates that transaction and the reconciliation and makes a little money in between.
Interesting.
Right? So what PayPro does is enable companies to send bills, collect payments against those bills and complete the transaction.
Makes sense. इसमें मुझे एक बात बताएं कि for example अगर मैं आज जो product as it exists today, let's assume I'm a school. I have 150 kids in my school, and every 2 months, the parents have to pay the fee. या तो वो आएंगे और आके वो कैश देंगे, मेरा कोई अकाउंटेंट बैठा होगा, या वो एक बैंक अकाउंट पे ट्रांसफ़र करके एक स्क्रीनशॉट मुझे भेजेंगे जिसको मेरे अकाउंटेंट को रिकन्सिलिएशन करनी पड़ेगी. या तीसरा पोटेंशियल तरीका, ये जो मेरी अंडरस्टैंडिंग है बेस्ड ऑन व्हाट यू गाइस डू, इज़ दैट एक ऑटोनमस तरीके से कस्टमर एडिड है, वो 2 मंथ के हिसाब से वो देखेगा कि अच्छा इसका 2 मंथ पूरा हुआ है, वो ऑटोनमसली इनवॉइस जनरेट करेगा और उनको ईमेल कर देगा या वो उनको टेक्स्ट मैसेज या व्हाट्सएप उसके ऊपर वो एक लिंक के साथ अपीयर हो जाएगा. वंस इट्स अपीयर्ड, वो उसके ऊपर जा सकते हैं और जाके वो उसी वक्त बिल पे कर सकते हैं. अब वो जो बिल पे है वो किस प्रोसेस के थ्रू हो रहा है? क्रेडिट कार्ड, डेबिट कार्ड, बैंक ट्रांसफ़र, ईजी पैसा, हाउ डज दैट वर्क?
So effectively what what PayPro allows billers to do, let's say in your example the school, is take the list of students that need to pay. That list could be in the form, it could be a API connected to our system, or it could be literally an Excel file that someone creates and uploads, right? We send that information to the parents through SMS, email, WhatsApp, whatever channel is required. They receive it and they can then pay that bill through credit card, debit card. They can pay it through their banking apps. They can pay it through EasyPaisa, JazzCash, and other sort of solutions. The minute they pay it, right, the bill is set off and settled instantly. They get a confirmation that the bill's been paid and the transaction is complete. This pales in comparison to standing in line at a bank branch for hours, trying with a particular form, trying to send money in over a counter, etc. and whatnot. So that's the issue it solves.
How do you reconcile the payment and the confirmation, right? So जो payment है वो let's assume मैं गया और मैंने choose किया bank transfer. Now, am I transferring it to the PayPro bank account or am I transferring it to the customer bank account? And once I'm transferring it, so my understanding is pre-Rast, you're not getting enough information from the person who's transferring to reconcile that, right? So पहले होता था किसी वजह से आप e-commerce में होते थे तो आपने एक पेमेंट की और फिर आपको एक स्क्रीनशॉट भेजनी पड़ती थी to confirm.
You don't need to do any screenshots with the solution, right? And the initial solution was built on OneLink. And OneLink actually provides you the ability for a third party like PayPro to send and receive confirmations on transactions. And there's no screenshots involved. It happens programmatically through APIs. And those APIs existed before PayPro existed. No one was using them, right? So I think it goes to my point about, I say a lot about the fact that we need to build business solutions, not services. The same services that we built PayPro on existed for maybe 3, 4, 5 years before we did it. But it's only when we started building it that people said, oh, okay, so you can also do this with the same set of Rails. Yeah, why not? So I think it's just a matter of looking at Rails and trying to figure out what can be done. In which case, the specific Rails we used at OneLink was the bill presentment system, right?
It's very similar to what Stripe does in a lot of ways. Invoice creation, online payment processing and so on. पाकिस्तान में आजकल एक नई गवर्नमेंट आई है, IT मिनिस्टर के हर ट्वीट के नीचे लिखा होता है पेपैल और स्ट्राइप कब आ रहा है पाकिस्तान. और मैं काफ़ी दफ़ा ये सोचता हूँ कि यार essentially why can't we build our own and then connect that to a global structure or get acquired later on. इस केस में जो and recently I had someone जिनकी पास फंडिंग भी है स्ट्राइप की. Safe pay, absolutely. And interestingly, मैंने जाके when they were coming in, so I went to apply for it. और मैंने वो पूरा फॉर्म वगैरह फिल किया, and then I never heard back from them again. And there is that problem in Pakistan, right? कि हमेशा बात होती है fintech के space में, particularly every quarter there are 2-3 new players, there are a few licenses that pop up, but हमेशा वो जो प्रोडक्ट सोल्यूशन बनी होती है वो एक 1% की 1% ऑडियंस के लिए होती है, जो कि एक परफेक्ट डेमोग्राफिक होती है, जो कि मोर ऑफन देन नॉट कौन होगा, एक बड़ा सा रिटेलर होगा सैफायर जैसा, और वो एक बड़ा सा ये होगा और बड़ा सा वो होगा. इकोनॉमी पूरी आपकी SME पे चल रही है. SME लार्जली वो चाहे भी ना तो उसको लिफ्ट ही नहीं कराई जाती. मैं इधर आया दुबई में, तो मैंने स्ट्राइप मेरा जब बैंक अकाउंट खुलिया ना, तो उसके तकरीबन आई थिंक 2 दिन बाद मैंने वैसे ही मैं गया तो नॉर्मली पाकिस्तान में तो फिनटेक में घुसने के लिए आपको बड़ा ना सूट पहन के बैठना पड़ता है कि यार आज फोकस करके मैं ये करूँगा। तो मैंने बिस्तर में था, मैंने स्ट्राइप अब खोला, इन्फॉर्मेशन डाली, उसने मुझसे 4 चीज़ें पूछी, KYC उसने पूरी की, उसने कहा जी अपना कंपनी का लाइसेंस दो, बैंक अकाउंट का ये दो वो दो, सारा कुछ डिजिटली अवेलेबल था, वो भी चूँकि डिजिटल था, डॉक्यूमेंट्स भी डिजिटल थी, वो मैंने साथ साथ अपलोड किया। आई थिंक विद इन 3 आवर्स आई वॉज रेडी टू टेक माई फर्स्ट पेमेंट। मैंने उसी वक्त अपना इन्वॉइस बनाया, मैंने अपने पाकिस्तानी क्रेडिट कार्ड से 10 दिरहम की वो की और पैसा आ गया। पाकिस्तान में सिमिलर सिचुएशन, अगेन सेफ पे इज ट्राइंग टू डू दैट, देर अनएबल टू। आप भी सिमिलर चीज़ कर रहे हैं, ऑनलाइन इन्वॉइसिंग है, बट वो ऑलवेज फोकस्ड लैंग्वेज में ही होता है कि फोकस्ड ऑन we're टारगेटिंग लार्ज मीडियम एंड लार्ज आइडियली, और हम जो है ना वो बड़ा एक बड़ा प्लेयर के साथ बैठ के काम कर लेंगे। बट जो डिजिटल ऑनबोर्डिंग है, जो हम कह रहे हैं कि यार कोई भी आ जाए, ठीक है KYC है ना, XYZ प्रोवाइड करो, आ जाओ, आके कर लो जो करना है, somehow वहाँ तक हम नहीं पहुँच पाते। सो in your case for example, let's say I'm a small and medium e-commerce player, and I want a payment solution on my website, and I want कि मैं जो है वो ये डाल सकूं, और ना सिर्फ वो कर सकूं बल्कि सोशल कॉमर्स में बड़े प्लेयर्स हैं आजकल, वो रन टाइम पे लाइव वीडियोस में बेच रहे होते हैं, तो उनके लिए तो बहुत ही यूज़फुल चीज़ होगी कि जैसे ही वो बंदे ने बिड करके फाइनल किया, उसको उसने ठक करके भेजा टेलर टू हिज ऑर्डर, और वो जी इनवॉइस पेमेंट हुई नहीं और पीछे से प्रोसेस हो गया, राइट? हम वहाँ तक पहुँच नहीं पाते। व्हाई डू यू थिंक दैट इज़ इन पाकिस्तान?
Because we aren't truthful with ourselves. And this is something that you'll hear constantly from me. I think we say 240 million people, but who are those actually 240 million people? And even those within those 240 million, the 60 million people, who are those people, right? That could actually use our service, could benefit from it in a meaningful and tangible way. The reality is, even within those 60 million people, we go for a further subset, especially when we start creating products in a vacuum, which is what often, unfortunately, a lot of us are guilty of doing, including myself at times, right? Where we'll create something and then try to figure out who can use it or who should be using it, right? For us, the challenge, at least with PayPro, was that using that system that we'd created was required a certain level of hygiene, right? It assumed a certain level of understanding of technology. You had to create a CSV or an Excel file, or you had to have a system where you stored your students, their parents' information, etc., and whatnot, because that's the information that went into the system, then that handled the billing. Right. So institutions or businesses that did not have some form of digital readiness could not really use the system in a meaningful way, right? Which is why the thinking sort of started becoming that it's not about just digital payments, because digital payments don't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
Digital payments are a component or one of the many rails that form a full business solution, right? And that's what sort of informed the next idea, right? Was that we need to go beyond payments. Today, however, just to answer your question, PayPro offers apps that can be used by individuals, businesses to go in, sign up, and then start generating invoices, accepting payments, etc., and whatnot as an individual. But it's taken 4 years to get there.
But it's now live?
Yeah, it's there.
And is it purely digital onboarding? Like if let's say there is
onboarding,
there is a e-commerce player, jisne
so it's not 3 hours, right?
Either way,
but it is digital onboarding.
Can you drive me through the process for people who might be listening? Let's say there's a girl in Sahiwal, she sells jode banage and wo
so
mahine ke.
There's a caveat there,
Right.
and I don't want to digress too much, but the caveat there is due to the restrictions of the sort of schemes and sort of the payment networks, only registered businesses can use it, right? So informal businesses, which could be me or you as an individual capacity, are not typically allowed to directly register on these platforms.
Right.
You require intermediary who effectively takes responsibility for you, who does the KYC, KYB, etc., and whatnot. Because as an informal business, what documentation are you going to provide me as a business? So PayPro today does not cater to informal businesses. It's something that's on our roadmap. There is an accommodation for it, which is known as the marketplace model, and we're working on that. But that's what The other
that
company
makes sense
solves.
because to be very honest, हमारा दुबई में it's the same thing, right? कंपनी के अगर मैंने वो लाइसेंस ना डाला होता ना तो मुझे नहीं मिलना था.
Absolutely.
Which is why मैं इसमें घुसना चाह रहा था because I wanted to inform the consumer as well कि यार बड़ा सिंपल सा है, 15,000 रुपये आप एक लॉयर को दें, वो आपकी कंपनी 2 मिनट में रजिस्टर करके लाके आपको पूरा वो FBR का चलान फॉर्म भी दे देगा. But if you have that FBR document that says that this is a, let's say, a sole proprietor company that has been registered,
You can.
you give that and you give your NIC.
Yeah.
वो
And you'll basically be able to accept card, debit, wallet payments, and bank transfers. And you can send payment links, etc., and whatnot to whoever you like.
And how long does the payment take to fall into your account once it's been made?
It should be 24 hours.
24 hours, really?
Yeah.
And how long does it take for the onboarding to complete?
So I believe it's 24 to 48 hours as of today.
And are you able to, at this point in time, scale कितना आ रहा है in terms of कितने लोग आ रहे हैं और कितना आप manage
So the
कर पा रहे हैं?
transaction volumes continue to grow, but what we
Registration.
I think that's a great question. I don't have that number off the top of my head right now.
But it's manageable.
Yeah.
क्योंकि सेफ पे से मेरी बात हुई, उन्होंने कहा यार इतना वो एकदम से फ्लड आया कि हमारे पास इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर ही नहीं है उसको मैनेज करने का, and which I found interesting because technically it should be.
Problem to have.
Yeah, but nonetheless, so okay, interesting. So you mentioned multiple times. That's where the next problem statement came in. What was the next problem statement?
So sort of the next problem statement was that it's one thing to do digital payments and to help businesses accept digital payments, but there's a precursor to that. They need to be able to understand what they're invoicing for. They need to have digital tools to help manage their business, because it's not just a matter of swiping the card, right? Or sending an invoice. It's about what happens before that, which is the creation of the invoice, the fact that some inventory was changed or managed, etc., and whatnot. So we start really thinking about what do businesses need to digitally transform themselves, right? What do they need to resemble businesses that we'd see any other part in the world, like, whether it's the Middle East or North America, etc. Those businesses that use digital tools to help drive efficiency, growth, productivity. Why don't we have that in Pakistan, right? And that's where the thinking for Brandverse came, right? Brandverse is an entity. It's got two personalities or two halves, right? One, it does. It's the only at-scale creator of e-commerce content in Pakistan.
Okay.
So,
what does that mean? What does that mean for again a girl in Sahiwal? Help explain this to her.
Sure. So when you go to when you order a bottle of water from Carrefour, or maybe another digital surface, the picture and information you see about the water bottle comes from a company like Brandverse, right? If not us, right? And when you start thinking about the fact that everything that you see on the shelves, hundreds of thousands of products that you'll find on in a large supermarket, for example, or a pharmacy, all of those things need to be sold online, and which means all of those things need to be photographed. Someone needs to write the names, the descriptions, and they need to write the ingredients, and it all needs to be accurate. Then you realize that there is actually a tremendous amount of work that needs to be done before you actually see that one product on that website and you hit add to cart, right? But then you also realize that the same product is also being sold by like 300 other retailers, right? So how are they going to do it? Is everyone going to take their own photograph of a product?
It's inefficient as hell.
Is everyone going to write their own descriptions?
Yeah.
And then, my product looks like this on this website, but it looks slightly different on another website, right? Is it the same product? How do I know? So what we've done is, over the course of 5 years, we've built Pakistan's largest aggregated database of high quality product information to the GS1 standard, which is the global standard for supply chain. And we've documented pretty much the entire retail universe in Pakistan. If you give me a product, I can tell you, based on its barcode, its ingredients, place of origin, height, size, width, depth. I can tell you its brand name. I can tell you where it was manufactured. I can tell you all of this information. I can even tell you in how it's sold in terms of bulk packaging, right? I can tell you whether it's perishable or not. And all of this is made possible through that content business that we created. The interesting thing is we started building content for the most boring things in the world, which is things like bottles of water and cans of soup and packs of soap, etc. and whatnot. But we found we were so great at creating content at scale, very efficiently and very high quality, we even got into fashion. So some of the largest fashion brands in Pakistan, we create content for them too. All in all, whether it's a bottle of perfume, whether it is a pair of shoes, a can of Coke, or a can of soup, a bottle of water, or the latest dress from one of the leading fashion brands. Chances are a lot of that content is being created in our facility in Karachi.
Interesting. And this includes all the metadata.
All of it.
The customers, are they, so they must have a certain set of requirements.
Sure.
But you go above and beyond those requirements.
Absolutely.
Based on global standards.
Absolutely.
You said you created the largest repository in Pakistan. What do you do with that repository? Customer तो आ रहा है, product दे रहा है, product दे के वो आपको वो information आपसे extract करके ले जा रहा है और अब उसके सर का दर्द है कि वो किस तरह उसको करे. But you have that repository, right? So is that just sort of your engine that just stays there in a sandbox, or is that being...
No, it's open to anyone who wants to use it. So they can come to us, get API access. There's no self-onboarding here though. You have to come meet us and you get access to it. And then you can consume all the data in our database in your own systems, however you want to use it. So whether you want to use it for retail shelf planning, whether you want to using it for data analysis, or whether you want to use it for enabling magical experiences in your app or platform, we can make it happen.
Has Daraz been working with you guys?
We do work with Daraz as well.
If Daraz is watching, why is their metadata so trashy? How does one make that better?
It's something we're working with them.
And it's nothing to do with Daraz, obviously. The consumer doesn't know enough. But platforms ka ye bada problem hota hai. But, you look at, let's say, Amazon, or you look at, I don't know, yahan pe wo dusra bada mashhoor hai, yellow wala, Noon. And then you go to Daraz, and it's just mind-boggling कि वो एक बस picture डाली होती है और वो भी generally internet से कहीं source हुई भी है. It's really horrible.
Because it's hard.
Okay.
Because it's difficult to create content. Remember, you're asking... Now think about what you're asking a seller to do. Now the seller is the person that you typically go buy something from within a shop. Whether it's a mobile phone or whether it's a toy or whatever, you're asking them to take beautiful photographs and upload them, maybe with nothing other than the cell phone. You're asking them to write fantastic descriptions with detail, and maybe there's a language barrier, and most likely you're asking them to do it in English, and you're asking for them to be coherent and complete and comprehensive and provide all the information you could possibly find that in store, which you would have received from just picking up that box. The answer is because it's hard. That's why it's not there.
Yeah.
And if Daraz were to put in very, very high standards for content, which Amazon does, you would find that there would be a lot fewer products on Daraz. So it's a check and balance type of thing, but it's also a reflection of seller maturity. I have no doubt in my mind that as time increases or time passes, content quality will also improve across all platforms. And that's a reflection of the maturity of the merchant base.
Right.
That is. But it's worth understanding.
But for example, क्योंकि जो आपने platform नहीं data engine की बात की ना, उसमें जो मेरे लिए चीज़ इंटरेस्ट करती है वो ये करती है. And again, I don't know if that is possible with Daraz. Daraz का अपना engine बहुत बड़ा और powerful है. My understanding is कि मैं Daraz के ऊपर जाता हूँ, मैं जाके एक product list करने लगता हूँ. So आपका एक इंजन है, आपने कहा कि बार कोड लेकर आओ, मैं तुम्हें उसका सारा इन्फॉर्मेशन दे दूंगा. मैं उस पर कहता हूँ कि यार अगेन बार कोडिंग एक स्टेप पे वो हाइजीन का मसला है कि कंज्यूमर को तो बार कोड शार कोड की सेंस ही नहीं है. वो तो इस प्रोडक्ट उठा रहा है, किसी छोटे शहर में बैठा हुआ है और वो कह रहा है बस मैं इसको डाल देता हूँ. टेक्निकली with a certain recommendation engine, आप जब the minute you start to add the title, it should start suggesting you, is this your product, is this your product, is this your product, and the minute you click on that product, all of that data should theoretically be fetched from your API and be made to appear.
Absolutely. 100% possible, but you have to understand, Daraz is a global platform. Technology, innovations, and improvements like this are something that they absolutely aspire to, because again, if their sellers are happy, Daraz is happy, consumers are happy. But it's a very difficult thing to achieve. But yes, if the question is, can we make this happen?
That's probably the question,
Can we power better merchant experiences for Daraz sellers? Absolutely. And that applies for every marketplace, including anyone selling on Foodpanda, etc. Because that arduous process of creating and identifying products and cataloging and uploading them can be reduced to a simple camera operation, just scanning a barcode. Right?
And that done. You don't even need that sort of red wala barcode machine, just a standard mobile
just
phone camera.
Any smartphone can be the world's most powerful sort of database of products.
Interesting. Right? You talked about Foodpanda, or Foodpanda में particularly, एक problem statement मैं आपके सामने रख रहा हूँ. See what you can do with that. Foodpanda कोविड के टाइम के ऊपर उन्होंने स्टार्ट किया Foodpanda shops. और उसमें सबसे पहले आई ग्रोसरी शॉप्स, क्योंकि उस टाइम पे रिक्वायरमेंट थी. इवेंचुअली Foodpanda, जो मेरी उनसे बात हुई है, उनको ये रियलाइजेशन हुई कि यार ग्रोसरी शॉप्स वेरी लो मार्जिन, ह्यूज अमाउंट्स ऑफ SKUs, prices inflating, deflating every single day. And so it was a logistical nightmare for a person to first list all of the SKUs available, and then connect that to the inventory management. बड़ा problem हो जाता है because वहाँ पर आपने वो digitize हुआ ही नहीं है. And then third, to actually reconcile the prices, right? So आपने एक दफ़ा डाल दिया, अब 4 दिन बाद जी कंपनी का डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर आया, उसने अगला क्रेडिट दिया, उसने कहा 2 रुपये प्राइस बढ़ गई है. अब आपको जाके वो कौन, तो आप एक बंदा बिठाए जो कि सुबह शाम बैठ के यही करता रहे. And so what they did was they went to the dark store route, and वहाँ पे they could maintain that because वो फिर हेड ऑफिस से मैनेज हो रहा था और सिर्फ प्रोडक्ट्स डिस्ट्रीब्यूट हो रही थी. बट जिस तरह से आपने कहा कि अगर एसेंशली लेट्स से 50 करियाने की दुकानें हैं, हर करियाने की दुकान को अपनी 1.5 ईंट की मस्जिद बनाने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. अगर सेंट्रल रिपोजिटरी एग्जिस्ट करती है, उसको सिर्फ ये बताना है कि यार ये मेरा रिपोजिटरी है, ये मेरे पास प्रोडक्ट है, और वो थियोरेटिकली प्राइस भी फैच कर सकता है, वो थियोरेटिकली उसके ऊपर एक मार्जिन कॉल बता सकता है कि यार 15% मार्जिन कॉल है मेरी, प्राइस तुमने फैच करनी है, सुबह पहली काम में API कॉल करो, लेटेस्ट प्राइस फैच करो, उसके 15% डालो, आगे फेंक दो. Is that possible with something like, let's say?
Absolutely. In fact, that was one of our hypotheses, that effectively, if you're able to take that simple idea of a barcode and build context around it, you can effectively create the language of commerce, right? And now, what does language do? It allows one person or one entity to communicate to another entity. And if you have a common language with a lot of entities, you can create interesting conversations or transactions, right? So much like what Google Maps does for location, it takes those weird little numbers, those GPS coordinates, and instead of coordinates, it translates into something more meaningful. It translates it into the name of a place, a name of a street, a particular location you're on. And what Google Maps, what has enabled are innovations like Careem and Uber, right? They've enabled Foodpanda, for example. And what they've been able to do is take many disparate actors and connect them together using the language of location. You're not standing on a corner of a street saying, hey, I'm here, right? That language of location powered by GPS and Google Maps is doing that. So in that way, can potentially in the future, we create a universal language of commerce based on what we have in terms of our database. And then can we create interesting businesses around it where maybe instead of my bottle of water or Coke that I want coming from 3 kilometers away at a dark store is actually reliably sourced from the grocery store that is literally 20 meters away from me, and Chotu picks up the bottle and brings it to me, and I, instead of waiting even 5 minutes, I get it in 1 minute. Is that possible? Absolutely. But that's only possible when you start with creating the language. And that's what we've done at Brandverse in terms of our content business, is create that referenceable language for anyone selling anything, whether it's pharmaceutical goods, FMCG goods, or anything else.
Interesting. Tell me about Bazaar and a lot of these sort of retail players that popped up a couple of years ago.
Yeah, we worked with a lot of them.
In the context of the language that you speak about, what value do you think there exists with the work that you do with them?
So look, creating and managing content and catalogs is a business itself, right? If your core business is not content, it's better off that someone else does it. So in that sense, we provide them efficiency, right? We provide them a shorter path to quality, right? Which otherwise they would struggle with, which otherwise would be a distraction for them from their core business, which may be servicing their customers, merchants, moving goods, logistics, whatever it is. I'm a big believer in specialization, right? Much like we specialize in content, there are others who specialize in logistics, etc. We should not be afraid of partnering to find communal efficiencies, and we should not be afraid of paying for that efficiency. That's what leads to more effective business structures and a more effective economy. So we do it, we continue to do it, we continue to work with a whole host of businesses, and we really see ourselves as boring infrastructure play, at least on the content side. And we'll continue to build this database and hope that businesses realize that this is not something they can always do themselves, and that there are better solutions to do it. And not just in the sense of cost efficiency, but also better ways to generate better quality, right? Through specialization.
In terms of one way of you throwing that content to them, is there a way to fetch the information? Let's say content is information, right? It's visual information, it's metadata information. Is there a way to take back pricing information? Because I think that would be fairly valuable when you're taking that. And so you built that core where you're saying, okay, listen, I have a product that I've built an information sort of gateway for, and I'm now giving it to 300 different retailers who are now selling it on their own. But there's a lot of value, I feel like, in knowing what those 300 different retailers eventually sell it for. Where are they based? So then you can begin to segment them according to region as well. And then there is a lot of knowledge from that information that can be extracted to optimize pricing. That I feel like in Pakistan, pricing is largely, apart from very very big companies, largely वो बस whim पे होती है कि यार mood मेरा ये है तो मैं इस तरह प्राइस कर देता हूँ, उसके ऊपर ज़्यादा वो काम नहीं होगा.
So when you structure information, it opens up the opportunity to bring parity in terms of how information is shared and what is shared. And to your point, yes, this is something we're looking at, and it's something we've actually started building. But it's something we would have liked to have done much earlier, but it's proven to be much more difficult than we initially imagined, because the practices in terms of how content is used is not consistent either, right? And there is no standard. Now, in Europe, there is a law which says that every single piece of information on a product that is on the physical packaging must be in its digital representation, so that digital consumers are not at a disadvantage to those that are shopping offline. There's no such protection in Pakistan. There's no such regulation in Pakistan. But when it comes, we'll be ready because we have all the information. But that'll also make a lot of this stuff much easier for consumers to be able to compare where and make better shopping decisions based not just on price, but also potentially quality.
Makes sense. You talked about collaboration earlier. And partnerships and collaboration. मैं थोड़ा सा रोल बैक करके फिनटेक स्पेस में आऊँगा. फिनटेक में मैं जो पाकिस्तान में देखता हूँ ना, तो लोग वॉलेट्स आफ्टर वॉलेट्स खोल रहे हैं, विच इज़ ग्रेट. ज़ाहिर है पेनिट्रेशन की एक प्रॉब्लम रही है हिस्टोरिकली. वो सारे के सारे वो 10-12% जो जिनके पास बैंक अकाउंट भी है, उनके पास सादा पे भी है, उनके पास ईजी पैसा भी है, एंड सो ऑन. इट्स गेटिंग बेटर, आई एम नॉट गोना लाई, आई डोंट वांट टू बी वन ऑफ दोज पीपल. बट जब भी मैं फिनटेक वालों से पूछता हूँ तो वो कहते हैं कि यार रियल मनी इज़ इन लेंडिंग, राइट? इट्स बेसिकली आइडेंटिफाइंग के कंज्यूमर को कौन सा कंज्यूमर जो है वो हमें पैसे वापस दे सकता है, और फिर उसको हम पैसे दें, लेंड करें फॉर रेलिवेंट थिंग्स, और वो उसको यूज़ करेगा और वैल्यू जनरेट करेगा और पैसे वापस करेगा. जब मैंने इसके ऊपर ज़्यादा डाइव किया तो रियलाइज़ ये हुआ कि पाकिस्तान में द बिगेस्ट प्रॉब्लम, और इस पर हमारे पास मल्टीपल प्रॉब्लम्स आ चुके हैं. ईजी पैसा का स्कैंडल बहुत मशहूर ज़माना. माइक्रो फाइनेंस पे चले जाएं वहाँ मसला, मैक्रो फाइनेंस पे चले जाएं तो वो हैस्कॉल का प्रॉब्लम जो आया था इतना बड़ा। एक जो मेजर चले हैस्को तो बहुत ही बड़े लेवल का प्रॉब्लम है ना, लेकिन जो माइक्रो पे प्रॉब्लम आता है वो ये आता है कि फॉर सम रीज़न वी आर अनएबल टू आइडेंटिफाई थ्रू डेटा कि कौन सा बंदा पैसे वापस कर सकता है या नहीं कर सकता। कुछ अर्सा पहले बाय नाउ पे लेटर वाला एक पूरा सिस्टम शुरू हुआ, जो कि एक क्रेडिट कार्ड फॉर द डिजिटल एज इफेक्टिवली आ गया। बट उसमें भी यही मसला हुआ कि जी स्टार्ट में गए इन्होंने जाके फेंका और उसके बाद फिर सारा पैसा दब गया क्योंकि डिलिंक्वेंसीज बहुत ज़्यादा थी। अच्छा, रिसेंटली आई वाज स्पीकिंग टू समवन, देयर ओपनिंग अ डिजिटल बैंक, अभी जो लाइसेंसेस मिले उनमें से एक, और उन्होंने कहा जी हम रेवोल्यूशनाइज़ करेंगे ये स्पेस क्योंकि हम जो है वो माइक्रो फाइनेंस की तरफ जा रहे हैं और हम तो छोटे लेवल के हर बंदे को लोन दे सकेंगे। मैंने कहा जी बड़ी ज़बरदस्त बात है, ये तो रेवोल्यूशनरी है वाकई, किसी ने नहीं सोचा इसके बारे में। तो आप मुझे ये बताएं कि आप इनपुट्स क्या लेंगे ना, कि आप किसी को लोन दे रहे हैं तो इनपुट्स क्या होंगे। वो इनपुट्स वही कि यार हम क्रेडिट ब्यूरो के पास जाएंगे, हम जो है वो पता नहीं नादरा के पास जाएंगे। यार जो छोटे लेवल पे बैठा है ना वो क्रेडिट ब्यूरो पे, ना वो नादरा पे, ना उसके ऊपर बैंक की इन्फॉर्मेशन स्टेट बैंक के पास उसका वो चेक लिस्ट आ रही है। और वहाँ पर मेरा क्वेश्चन उसमें ये आता है कि यार यहाँ पर विद द करंट प्लेयर्स दैट एग्जिस्ट देयर इज़ एक्चुअली अ लॉट ऑफ वैल्यू इन बिकमिंग एन इंटरमीडियरी जो कि डेटा सिर्फ एक्सट्रैक्ट करे, राइट। सो फूड पैंडा, दराज, दिस दैट, वो सारा जाते हैं आपका टैग्ड टू योर फ़ोन नंबर थियोरेटिकली, उससे वो डेटा एक्सट्रैक्ट करके थियोरेटिकली आई कैन क्रिएट अ ग्रेट क्रेडिट स्कोर फॉर एन इंडिविजुअल बेस्ड ऑन के दराज के कितने ऑर्डर्स उसने मंगवाए और वापस भेजे, बेस्ड ऑन फूड पैंडा पे वो कितना रेगुलरली ऑर्डर करता है, बेस्ड ऑन सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ। एंड आई स्पोक टू डिफरेंट folks from startup spaces and हमेशा वो आके ये बात करते रहे हैं कि हाँ ये हम कर रहे हैं, करेंगे इंशाल्लाह। बट नज़र ये आता है कि everybody is very in a country where data largely isn't protected, keeps on आपका फ़ोन नंबर डालें, आपका नातरा का सारा इन्फॉर्मेशन आ रही है ऑनलाइन। Everybody is very protective of their data, even if they're not even interested in कि यार ठीक है मैं डेटा को साफ़ करूँगा, मैं प्राइवेट डेटा हटा दूंगा, मैं तुम्हें इवन कॉन्टेक्स्ट बनाकर भेज दूंगा, लेकिन लेट्स क्रिएट अ बिजनेस मॉडल आउट ऑफ इट, राइट। तुम मुझसे एपीआई कॉल करो, 50 रुपये लो, मेरे से ये डेटा लो, तुम 4 और लोगों से इस तरह लो, मुझे ही पैसा मिल रहा है, तुम्हें पैसा मिल रहा है। बट वो लार्जली अपनी एक छोटी सी प्रॉब्लम में फोकस्ड है। ये बड़ी बेसिक टेक एनेबल्ड प्रॉब्लम है जिसके थ्रू अगेन जिस तरह आपने कहा कि वो जब लैंग्वेज ऑफ कॉमर्स के अंदर लैंग्वेज ऑफ क्रेडिट स्कोरिंग भी एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट लैंग्वेज है जिसकी वजह से लार्जली हमारा कंज्यूमर क्लोन शार्क्स पे जाता है। हमारा कंज्यूमर जो है वो जाता है जाके वो दुकानों पे जाता है कि जी 1 लाख रुपए की बाइक जो है वो 2.5 लाख की मिलेगी, किस्तों पे मिल जाएगी। दैट वी हैवंट बीन एबल टू ऑप्टिमाइज दैट। एंड मैंने ये सोचा था कि ये शायद बहुत पहले हो जाएगा, बट डेटा के ऊपर काम करना अभी तक ज़्यादा कंपनीज नहीं कर रही। वो ऑपरेशनली तो बहुत कुछ कर रही है, मैं डिजिटाइज कर दूंगा, मैं ये कर दूंगा, मैं वो कर दूंगा, लेकिन उसके पीछे जो डेटा जनरेट हो रहा है उस डेटा के अंदर जो एक्स अमाउंट ऑफ न्यू वैल्यू दैट इज पोटेंशियली you can generate, that value is not actualized because of a lack of collaboration and data sharing.
I don't disagree. I think the real value of data reveals itself when you sort of add layers to it from other data sources. But if those data sources themselves are siloed, then you're only really seeing what I'd say is potentially even a biased view, but if not a singular view of let's say a particular customer or a segment. Collaboration is not something that is easy in Pakistan for whatever reason. For the life of me, I haven't been able to figure out why it's so difficult. I think it's, yes, there's a lot of possessiveness around data, but also a lot of hesitance around cracking collaborations, working on meaningful partnerships.
Trust ka issue, do you think?
I don't know. Based on the number of MOUs that are signed in this country, you would assume that collaboration is happening left, right, and center. But if you really look past the MOUs, doesn't really seem like much is happening, right? It's not very meaningful. And I think it's trust. I think, if it sounds like a good idea, sign a MOU. But if it's if it pans out and there's something behind it, then actually partner and get in bed. And I think that's what, there's just a lot of distrust, a lot of conversation that happens and not a lot of delivery. And I think that's more than ever before, that's where we need to hang our hat on, right? Which is actually delivering on it. But to your earlier point around the promise of data, right? your data-driven strategy for anything, marketing, pricing, whatever, is only as good as the quality of the data, right? If the data you're gathering is terrible, of poor quality, then so will the output be. Garbage in, garbage out. So why over-index on protecting your data, that you don't know what the quality is? You're just assuming it's very good. Put it out there, test it. And the best way to test it is to let people use it and give you feedback on it. If you keep it to yourself in the hope one day that you're going to one day use it and leverage it to some benefit, we'll still be waiting. Today is 2023, we'll be 2030. We're still talking about all the data we have and the fact we're doing nothing with it.
Right. You talked about Brandverse. I know that there's Chikoo as well. What does that do? And how did that come about?
So we have this very large database of products. And we start really thinking about the fact that it can unlock tremendous efficiencies for sellers and merchants of all sizes. We're not just talking about the Carrefours of this world or the hyperstars. We're talking about even the small merchant. But then you start thinking about the fact that, okay, how is the small merchant going to use this data? They're going to need a solution or a vector to leverage it, right?
What does that mean? Explain.
And the idea is that data by itself doesn't really help, right? So, I mean, it's kind of like saying that we have this chemical, it can solve XYZ, but, you can't hand the chemical over to a...
you need a public facing...
You need to package it.
Packaging, right.
You have to package it in a way that's accessible and usable. Otherwise, what's the point?
Right.
It's kind of like coming up with a fantastic pill for weight loss, except it's a massive packaging, right, that you can't swallow or consume. So it's not going to work. It's not compatible with people's mouths or their digestive systems, right? So in the same way, we really thought, okay, so we need to figure out a way to enable merchants or sellers to be able to leverage this data. And that's around the same time COVID hit. And at that point in time, there's a clamor with all the shutdowns, et cetera, to start selling online as a way of preserving business continuity in some way or form. And that's when we started creating Chikoo. Initially, the idea was, let's create Shopify for this part of the world, right? Simple, very easy to use. And the key element of it would be that if you have 500 products in your store, you just scan 500 products and off to go. You're ready to transact, right? Everything is figured out for you. You don't have to do any configuration, download an app, and there you go. But as time went on, and we started working with more and more of our customers much more closely, we started discovering they had many more business needs, right? They wanted to know how they were doing in terms of the business, in terms of financials. They wanted a way of managing inventory. They wanted reporting. They wanted a point of sale solution so that they could see everything from one window. They wanted a solution where they could see their own orders, their point of sale orders, the customers walking in, as well as their delivery customers, their e-commerce, as well as Foodpanda customers if you're a restaurant. They wanted everything in one place, and they wanted it so that it could make their life easier, so that they could focus their time and efforts on growing their business or making their business more profitable. And that sort of struck a note with me because, again, from my time at Google, et cetera, and whatnot, we realized that technology is a enabler of growth. It's an enabler of profitability. It's an enabler of uplift for people's lives. So, it felt like it was in our wheelhouse. So he said, okay, fine, let's build this out. And we kept building and building and building and building. And, we're in a pretty happy space as far as the product goes today.
What's the product for, again, a layman? If I do, it's an app, right? So if I do
it's
download.
An app. You can use it on your phone. You can use it on your laptop.
So let's assume I download the app on my phone. What do I get out of it?
In 30 seconds, you'll set up a digital version of your business.
Okay. So it's like a digital shop.
Yeah. So you will be able to use that platform to cater to customers that walk into your store, cater to orders that you're receiving over Facebook or Instagram, cater to orders on your own website. Let's say you're a restaurant, even orders that are coming from things like Foodpanda or aggregators like Foodpanda, all in one place. all your customer information, all your financial information, all your order information, all in one place in the palm of your hand.
And let's say जो digital वाले हैं, website पे आ रहा है, Shopify के through, Foodpanda की app से आ रहा है, do you have to individually add all of those orders? Or is there some sort of a data linkage?
It's all interconnected, magical, out of the box. And the idea is that it's one app or one solution, and it can help you manage every aspect of your small or medium business. It's not something we designed for, large corporates. It's being used by some large corporates, but it's not something we designed for them. We designed for the little guy in mind.
Right. But it's largely a behind the scenes product. So it's the engine of their business.
Operating system for your business.
For your business. You're not saying कि listen हमारे पे आ जाओ and then फिर हमारे थ्रू ही एक शॉप क्रिएट हो जाएगी और हमारे थ्रू ही कॉमर्स करो. आप ही कह रहे हैं कि यार कॉमर्स तुम्हारा अपना सर का दर्द है, तुम फिजिकल कर रहे हो, तुम अपनी वेबसाइट पे कर रहे हो, हम सिर्फ डेटा गैदर करके तुम्हें सेंट्रलाइज्ड रिपोर्टिंग देंगे.
We're giving you the tools.
Right.
So when you download our platform or start using our platform, if you want a website, we'll give you a website.
Okay, you can do that as well.
Yeah, instantly, right? If you want a point of sale, use the point of sale that we have. If you don't want to use ours, use someone else, you can use that too. You want to sell on Foodpanda? Great. We'll connect your Foodpanda account to it. You want to sell on Daraz? We can connect your Daraz account to it as well, right? You want analytics, reports, etc. You pick and choose what you want out of the platform and use it. But if you have nothing else, or if you have disparate pieces, what we offer you is a fully integrated solution that is a delight to use, right? And that's where we hang our hat on. A lot of people focus on consumer experience, right? Okay, how will the end customer like it? Our entire focus is on the merchant.
Right.
We're solving for the merchant's experience.
What about the point of sale? So in terms of, let's say कि मैं सदर में एक मेरी शॉप है और मैं XYZ चीज़ें बेचता हूँ. इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स की शॉप है, वो नहीं चाइना वाली, थाईलैंड वाली इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स, 3 से 5 हज़ार की कंज्यूमर गुड्स, होम इलेक्ट्रॉनिक्स. मैंने आपका वो सिस्टम लिया और मैंने पॉइंट ऑफ सेल उसका ऐड कर दिया. अच्छा, अब चूंकि ये सारी की सारी प्रोडक्ट का थियोरेटिकली बारकोड एग्जिस्ट करता है, तो जब मैंने उसका बारकोड स्कैन किया तो वो मेरे उधर से उसने डेटा फैच करके उस पर ऐड कर दिया. ऐसा ही है?
Yeah, you can add. So typically when you get a point of sale solution, you have to feed it all the data of your products.
Right.
You don't need to do that with Chikoo. You can either just scan the product and add it to your catalog. Or we have a version of it where you don't even have to scan the product. Every single time you scan the product, it'll go fetch the information from a database. So it's actually something that requires zero setup. So someone who has never used a point of sale, doesn't know how to configure it or anything like that, can literally load the app and start creating bills and invoices based off just off the barcodes with zero configuration.
Interesting.
And that's the value when you integrate everything.
And but for those जो के set हैं, इसमें इन्वेंट्री मैनेजमेंट भी हो रही है. स्टार्ट में आ रहा है तो मैं कह रहा हूँ कि यार आज वो आए हैं 10 कार्टन उसके हैं, इसमें 50 ऑफ द सेम प्रोडक्ट है. मैंने एक प्रोडक्ट वो की और मैंने उसमें डाल दिया 50 और मैंने साथ प्राइस डाल दी और अब वो मेरे सिस्टम में एडेड है. अब कस्टमर आया,
सिस्टम में भी एडेड है, वेबसाइट पे भी आ गए, अगर आपने दराज या फूड पैंडा पे भी एंटर वहाँ पे भी
सब पे भी चले गई
इंस्टेंटली.
अब कस्टमर आया, उसने आके वो डब्बा उठाया, उसने आके सामने रख दिया. अब मैंने उस पर गया और मैं उसको स्कैन करूँगा तो मैं उस पर वो आ गया, उस पर जो मैंने प्राइस डाली वो प्राइस आ गई, उसको मैंने इन्वॉइस जनरेट कर दी.
बिल्कुल.
इन्वॉइस जनरेट हो गई तो वो जो है वो जाके हर जगह पे अपडेट कर दिया उसने कि जी -1. ऐसा ही है?
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is doing everything on their smartphone or a tablet for that matter.
Smartphone, tablet, web,
laptop,
browser, laptop, desktop, जो भी आप चाहे किसी भी होता है. And what we've now done is also put it on the card machine, and that's what we're doing with Bank Alfala.
So that was the announcement.
Absolutely. So we took that
device. So आजकल Android वाली devices आना शुरू हो गई हैं.
Absolutely. The device that's sitting on so many retailers' counters today and not doing anything other than processing payments and churning out receipts can do so much more.
Yeah.
So what we did was take our entire platform and embed it on that device. So that device today can live at the heart of your business. You can use that device now to manage your inventory, e-commerce, all of that right from that device and payments.
So आपने उसमें पे क्लिक किया, उसने उसी वक्त रिवर्ट की अल्फला की ऐप के ऊपर, उसने कार्ड की वो NFC ऑन कर दी. Is that how it works?
Absolutely. That's exactly how it works. And you do it and you get 2 receipts. One receipt is for the customer, but that receipt for the customer includes all the items that were sold plus the transaction information on one piece of paper, right? And then one receipt for the merchant if they want it. Now think about the fact that we've just, through this process, we've married cardholder information, right? Customer information, in other words, with line item level data. Typically, when you do a transaction at a retail point of sale or anywhere else, what information does a bank see? All they see,
फाइनल आती है ना, हाँ, जो एग्जैक्ट
they see an amount and they see a time and a merchant ID and maybe some information about a merchant, right? That's all they see. Today, if you transact on our system and we identify you as a customer, either by name or by card or by phone number, but through a loyalty program or anywhere else, we can tie that purchase history to you. So we know, for example, that if you're buying diapers, based on the type of diapers you're buying, I can tell what the age of your child is, right? I can also tell you whether your child is sick at any given point in time. And think about what this means in terms of marketing ability and insight. Because if your child is sick, if you've got a young child, is that possibly the best opportune time to talk to you about health insurance or life insurance? A lot of marketers would say, I'd kill for that opportunity to know when this is happening. And these are the sort of possibilities, slightly creepy, but very powerful, that we can make happen.
Interesting. Again, मैं थोड़ा सा इस यूज़र एक्सपीरियंस को समझना चाह रहा हूँ. Historically, आपने और I really want to talk about digitizing the physical retail spaces, right? So we talk a lot about e-commerce and we talk a lot about कि यार सामान उठाओ और जाके ऑनलाइन बेचना शुरू कर दो. But the fact of the matter is, and particularly COVID and post-COVID ने हमें ये दिखाया कि COVID में हमने कहा अब तो सब डिजिटली होगा. आहिस्ता 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 लोगों ने कहा कि यार नहीं, फिजिकल इज़ इम्पॉर्टेंट एज वेल. एंड सो मेजॉरिटी ऑफ योर कॉमर्स, चाहे वो डिजिटल को लेवरेज कर ले, वो जो है ना IT और IT enabled services वाली सिचुएशन, देयर इज़ नॉट अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क दैट is being done in Pakistan to digitize the existing ecosystem जो कि दुनिया में हो गया, राइट? सो आप जाते हैं, आप बाहर के किसी स्टोर में जाते हैं तो आपके पास जो है वो शेल्फ्स पे चीज़ें, बड़े बड़े स्टोर्स हैं, शेल्फ्स पे चीज़ें पड़ी हुई हैं, दरमियान में बारकोड स्कैनर्स हैं, आपने रन टाइम में प्राइस कर लिया, आपको बंदे की ज़रूरत नहीं है. आप गए तो उसके बाद उसके पास स्कैनर है, उसने स्कैन करके उसने ऑप्टिमाइज़ किया टाइम कि यार जल्दी जल्दी हुआ और आगे निकल गया, पर्चियाँ ख़त्म होना शुरू हो गई. It's a lot of these small processes that you digitize and then it allows for efficient business practices. My understanding is, जो आपने अभी चीकू का बयान किया है, that does a lot of this sort of digitizing the physical retail space. But इसी context के अंदर some of the tools that have historically been used, right? जिसमें एक ही है कि जी barcode एक global barcode system structure है, but पाकिस्तान में आपको पता है कि यार A कैटेगरी, B कैटेगरी, C कैटेगरी, कॉपी कैटेगरी, हर किस्म का माल है. एंड सो काफ़ी ज़्यादा पाकिस्तान में रिटेलर्स जो हैं वो अपना जनरेट कर रहे होते हैं. लेट यू गो टू लेट्स से दीज डी वॉटसन टाइप्स, तो उनके ऊपर एक स्टिकर लगा हुआ होगा जो कि उनके बारकोड का स्टिकर होगा, एक कंपनी के बारकोड का स्टिकर होगा, एक अपने बारकोड का होगा, और उनका एक्चुअली एक लोकलाइज्ड किस्म का बारकोड मैनेजमेंट सिस्टम चल रहा होगा, राइट? जिसमें आपकी एक सॉर्ट ऑफ एक जो सेंट्रल सिस्टम है दैट हैज़ टू कम्युनिकेट विद ए प्रिंटिंग मशीन, अ स्टिकर प्रिंटिंग मशीन दैट विल कीप ऑन प्रिंटिंग एंड एडिंग टू व्हाटएवर. एंड देन आपके पास जो है वो बारकोड रीडर्स बहुत सारे वो होते हैं, सिंपल लाइन वाले भी होते हैं, अब तो मल्टी लाइन वाले भी आ गए. इन दिस कॉन्टेक्स्ट, एट दिस पॉइंट इन टाइम, जो आपका सोल्यूशन है बारकोड का, तो आपने बोल दिया कि हमने कैमरा को, अब आजकल टेक्नोलॉजी ऐसी है कि कैमरे को यूज़ करके वी कैन यूटिलाइज दैट एंड वी कैन बाईपास दिस सॉर्ट ऑफ एक्स्ट्रा कॉस्ट दैट इज़ रिक्वायर्ड. बट इन टर्म्स ऑफ लेट्स से प्रिंटिंग मशीन्स एंड अदर सॉर्ट ऑफ कमर्शियल प्रोडक्ट्स, are you at this point in time able to communicate with them and create that ecosystem?
Yeah. So even with that Android-based card processing machine, you can connect a barcode scanner to it and it'll work.
Really?
Yeah. So
how does that work? Like Bluetooth or
USB-C?
Acha.
Right? Or micro USB. So it works and plugs in and it works. Our system supports all of this. But I think there are 2 points that come across as quite interesting from your thing. World over, the desire for use of technology tends to be efficiency, right? How many businesses do you know in Pakistan that truly believe and desire efficiency? Because if they did, I think we'd be looking at a very different business landscape. Typically, what drives the use of technology in Pakistan beyond efficiency is control or visibility, right? It's to know what is happening. It's typically when the business owner realizes that he doesn't know what's happening in his business or how much he's losing or how much he's making. That is what drives the use of digitization. So regardless of what the case is or what the motivation is, our solution caters to it, right? It caters to the needs of business owners, but also the operators, right? And we fundamentally believe there's a tremendous opportunity in Pakistan to address these concerns and meaningfully digitize a lot of these businesses in a way that results hopefully in a much stronger economy.
In terms of, and this is the last question on Chikoo, but in terms of now that you have, let's say, a POS system, is it live now? Is it?
Yeah, it's being used all across Pakistan.
So let's assume that there's a medium-sized superstore, general store that's using this. And because it's using this system, so it has a inventory management system as well.
Yes.
And because it has the inventory management system, the logical next step would be to automate the ordering process, right? Which my understanding is Bazaar and all of those people are doing. At this point in time, is there a connectivity that allows for automation of that through partners maybe?
On our side, yes.
On your side, yes.
Yes. We're waiting for our partners to catch up and be ready to be able to connect their pipe it into our system. But yes, on our side, yes. So the way we see it is when we digitize a merchant or a seller, we want to enable them to digitize backwards and forwards their interactions. So backwards into the supply chain, they should be able to procure, manage, and pay for the goods that they sell or their inputs through our system. And outwards in the sense that the consumers who buy from them should be able to transact with them, pay them, etc., also through the same channels. So whether it's e-commerce, whether it's walk-in customers, point of sale, through aggregators, and then dealing with a bouquet of supply side actors, we should be able to bring efficiency, elegance, and delight to the merchant experience, right? Create an experience that the merchant goes and says, I don't know how I lived without it before. And that's our goal.
क्योंकि लॉजिकल है ना, अगर उसका अब मर्चेंट का एक पार्ट ऑफ हिज प्रोसेस इज टू कि इन्वेंट्री का ख़त्म हो रही है, अच्छा मुझे संडे को जाना है, छोटे को दुकान में बिठा के कि वो जाऊंगा, जाके माल सारा उठाऊंगा. टेक्निकली अगर वो डेटा ऑलरेडी अवेलेबल है, सो डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर को आना चाहिए और कहना चाहिए कि यार तुम्हारा माल कम हो रहा है, मैं तुम्हें इस प्राइस, लाइक इट्स अ ग्रेट मार्केटिंग अपॉर्चुनिटी फॉर द डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर, सेगमेंटेड, टारगेटेड, अवेलेबल कि यार तुम्हारे ही एरिया के अंदर तुम उस दुकान पे जाते हो, मीनवाइल 3 स्टॉप्स छोड़ के एक और दुकान है जिसका माल ख़त्म हो रहा है, जाते हुए उसको भी पूछ लो. डू यू थिंक दैट्स पॉसिबल?
Absolutely. I think the thing that you have to understand is a lot of what we do is we have a particular type of thinking and we call it partner first, right? So everything that someone else could do better than us, we would rather let them do it and integrate with them and partner with them on it. If we're creating value for someone, let's partner with them. If they can do it better than us, let's partner with them. If and only when they are not doing something and we can do it better than them in some very meaningful way, and I'm not saying 5% better or 10% better, but I'm saying significantly better, only then should we do it ourselves. And that's why we want to be effectively the layer amongst for the merchant through which he interacts backwards and onwards. And the way we create value is to make the merchant's life easier. The more we do that, the better experience it is for the merchant. And for us, that means we need to look at all the different people a merchant interacts with, whether that's a bank, whether that's a supplier, whether it's his employees, right, or her employees, and really solve for all of that, right? For us, that means thinking about payroll automation. And how can we create value for the merchant's employees? Can we offer them health insurance? Can we offer them incentives to use digital payments? I'm not talking about the merchant. I'm talking about his employees or her employees now. That's the idea, right? And we've got a very ambitious roadmap that we'll continue to build. And our singular North Star, right, in terms of what we're chasing, is that idea when the merchant comes back to us and says, thank you. Right? Because you've made my life easier, because you've created value for me. And that's our goal. All right. More than anything else, money will follow, right? The business models will follow, the revenue streams will follow. it's very easy to monetize happy customers, right? It is very difficult to monetize upset customers, and that's what we're trying to avoid, and we're trying to create delight.
Makes sense. So I wanna understand the structure part of all of your startups. There are 3 as I distributed.
2.
So Brandverse जो है वो Chikoo के अंदर ही आती है.
Chikoo is under Brandverse.
Chikoo
is a platform that's on Brandverse.
So PayPro तो आपने कहा था कि वो आपके वालिद साहब ने शुरू की है, उसका तो I'm assuming
it's sort of gone through multiple evolutions. I sit on the board now.
You sit on the board now.
Yeah. But I'm not operationally involved.
Okay. What about Brandverse? Co-founders कितने हैं? क्या situation है?
I have a co-founder.
Okay. Who is?
At Brandverse, Faizan Siddiqui.
Right.
He sort of brings a wealth of experience from.
What was he doing before this?
A bunch of things, but he was the group chief operating officer of TCS. Prior to that, he was at the Jung Group and was heading digital media there, or the digital media side of the business. Prior to that, he was working with TRG, Affinity, GE. His resume goes on for a bit.
Say it. So it's primarily 2 of you guys.
We have a very large team. It's a burgeoning 130 odd people across the 2 divisions, and we're very, very grateful to have a very strong second layer that sort of looks after day-to-day things so that we can do things like this.
Interesting. And tell me about funding. So at any point did you receive funding? कौन से level पे, कौन से round पे, publicly available information है कि कितनी?
Yeah, so we've raised a total of about $2.5 million worth of funding to date. And we've raised largely from institutional investors in Pakistan.
Okay. Can you name any?
Well, the institutional investor that I can name in Pakistan is the JS Bank.
Okay.
Which is a large sort of a bank in Pakistan. Given our sort of fintech aspirations, it makes strategic sense.
And this 2.5 million is for Brandverse or both?
It's for Brandverse.
Okay.
PayPro has a separate set of investors. But for Brandverse, we've been fortunate to receive investment from them, and they've been good to us. And I think a lot of the reason why that's worked out is they have a very good understanding of the Pakistani market and realities, and expectations have been accordingly tuned. So it's not outsized or outlandish expectations that come with the money, which is some of the problems that we see here with VC.
Interesting. पहले तो ये बताएं कि पार्टनरशिप आपने बैंक अल्फला के साथ की, इन्वेस्टर JS बैंक था, तो why not JS Bank?
JS Bank at this particular moment does not have an acquiring business, so they're not in the business of acquiring payments. It's something that they're building out, and we look forward to working with them on it. But if you had to have a choice to work with a particular bank in Pakistan in respect to payments, I think the only choice in that sense is Bank Al-Falah, given their history.
How so?
One of the largest acquirers in e-commerce and retail today, probably
bigger than HBL.
I'm not sure in terms of volumes or sizes, but consider that in terms of internet payments, they're probably among the largest, if not the largest.
Right.
They've got a massive footprint. They've been in this business longer than anyone else, more or less. If you'd remember when card machines came out in the very first, it was Bank Al-Falah. I think UBL might have been there as well, but it was largely Bank Al-Falah. So there's a tremendous amount of experience, a lot of ambitions. And remember, this is still a relatively young bank, right?
Yeah.
I think it's 1997 was when the bank was formed. So, I mean, we're talking about less than 30 years. So they're aggressive.
Are they still with the Abu Dhabi group?
Yes, as far as I know.
Right. And दूसरा मुझे ये बताएं, you didn't go with VCs जो पॉपअप कर रहे होते हैं आजकल, बहुत सारे नाम बड़े अच्छे वेल रिस्पेक्टेड भी हैं. इंडस वैली कैपिटल है, DOSI वेंचर्स है, खुद खैर अर्ली स्टेज है, Zen कैपिटल है. Did any of them invest in you? And if not, why did you go for an institutional one rather than a...
I don't think as entrepreneurs or a business, we are a good fit for VCs. the reason for that is we are very hyper realistic in our outlook. Myself and Faizan, my co-founder, we find it very difficult to lie to ourselves or give into delusions of grandeur. So given that, it's very difficult for us to spin a fantastical tale that I understand why people want it. We're just unwilling to give it.
Do you think that's going to change? Sorry, aap complete kar le.
Sorry, just to complete my thought. That's not to say I don't appreciate what VCs do. And, you know, our earlier conversation, we talked about the fact that, you know, what VCs do is basically God's work, right? It's backing ambitious founders, trying to do world-changing ideas, create value out of nothing, and doing it with the realization it could all go down to zero. So to me, it's one of the most honorable things to be doing, and also one of the riskiest things. It sounds insane in many ways, but I understand the business. It's great. I just don't think VC is necessarily for everyone, and certainly not for every Pakistani company either. We are a low, slow burn because our market is developing, right? The market's understanding of what we are selling is developing. The market's not ready today, and we never said it was. We said that we're going to have to combat the headwinds, but we'll also have to ride the tailwinds. And our hypothesis is that the tailwinds and what we're building will eventually prove to be a greater force than the headwinds in this market.
Do you think the current VCs or the current thought process, at least, is not conducive to playing the long game in Pakistan? My understanding is any VC would not really consider Pakistan an easy money market. वो तो long game ही खेलने आया हुआ है. But इसी को अगर मैं further वो करूँ कि I do understand 2020 से 2021 pump and dump scheme चल रही थी पूरी दुनिया में, और उसी के remnants हमने पाकिस्तान में भी देखे. और वो pressure जब ऊपर से आ रहा था कि यार, you know what, burn and multiply and then, you know, get acquired, वो pressure अब हमारे पास भी आया. But going forward, do you think जो कैलकुलस है वो अब थोड़ा रीडिज़ाइन होना शुरू हो गया है ग्लोबली एंड देन मे बी इन पाकिस्तान एज वेल, जहाँ पर अब थोड़ा सा ये कहा जा रहा है कि ओके कैश पॉजिटिव दिखाओ, स्लो चलो, फंडामेंटल्स फिक्स करो, सिम दुरुस्त करो, या डू यू थिंक कि वो अभी एक झटका लगा है, वो वापस मार्केट फ्रेंजी में जाएगी और फिर वो अगला फ्रेंजी स्टार्ट हो जाएगा?
So I don't know where somehow in this story in the last few years there was a disconnect between building a business and building a startup. When you're building a startup, you're building a business. At the end of the day, the business needs to make money. That's got to be the goal. The only difference was that the startup was allowed to be more ambitious and have more time to achieve some form of viability. Somehow that seems to have gotten lost in translation, right? Where it was translated into growth at all costs, right? Exit before anything else, or focus on exits, etc. and whatnot. And I fundamentally disagree with that approach. At the end of the day, every startup is supposed to be a business. It needs to be value additive, not value subtractive, which means at some point in time, sooner or later, it needs to make money. The plausibility of any startup hypothesis is related to the idea that, you know, is directly related to whether that startup or that idea or the fundamentals of that business look like at some point in time they're going to turn over from red to black, right? And the reason why we're in that business today is we believe that, yes, today we are in the red, right? But we will turn it into black. And the hope is that we're not delusional, right? And we haven't gotten high off our own supply, etc., and we're not believing our own bullshit. So that's the plan, right? And I think we just need to be honest with ourselves, right? And I think the reality is that certainly there is no gold rush of VC money coming in, and there shouldn't be right now. I think there's some really fantastic companies that VC should be looking at and investing in. They are truly large ideas that could change the Pakistani economy, and their ideas being built in Pakistan that could scale across markets, and those are worth investing in. But certainly, no shotgun approach of go wild with money, etc., or go burn, etc. And I don't think that's healthy for the market either.
Do you think, or rather, what are your thoughts on what's happened, the bloodbath that has happened in the startup ecosystem over the last year and a half. वो पहले वो स्विवल का एग्जिट हुआ, फिर एयरलिफ्ट का हुआ, फिर वो एग्जिट से मुराद दूसरे वाला एग्जिट नहीं, बुरे वाला एग्जिट, एंड देन वो एक गाड़ी वाली कंपनी थी, कार फर्स्ट आई थिंक, वो जो गाड़ियाँ ख़रीद के बेचती थी आगे, टर्किश या कौन सी थी. एंड सो उसके बाद से हमने देखा, फिर हमें सुनने में आया कि वो दस्तगीर्स एंड दिस एंड दैट कि जी वो रिटेल वो कह रहा है कि नहीं, हम पाकिस्तान में ऑपरेशन ख़त्म करके हम दूसरी मार्केट्स में चले जाएंगे. तो चाहे वो बंद ना भी हों तो वो अपने आप को ना वो रीडिज़ाइन कर रहे हैं अपनी लैंग्वेज को कहीं ना कहीं सर्वाइव करने के लिए. इफ़ यू वर टू गिव एंड अगेन मैं इसको उस पर करूँगा कि हमारे यहाँ पाकिस्तान में एक वियर्ड मसला है वेयर कॉमेंटिंग ऑन एनी थिंग इज़ कंसिडर्ड एज it's considered a negative thing, which I feel like is not globally.
That's okay, I'm an unfashionable person.
But वो generally ना for the consumer as well, right? के critique all over the world is considered a good thing. It's considered as कि यार हाँ, I feel like कि ये चीज़ इस वजह से नहीं की, and then other person can come and answer that as well. But पाकिस्तान में we largely try to stay away from it. हम बस अपनी चीज़ के बारे में बात करना चाहते हैं. जैसे दूसरी चीज़ के बारे में आती है तो वो एक वो YouTube पे वीडियो आ जाती है कि इसने इसके बारे में क्या कहा, देखो ज़रा, फड्डा. What I'm trying to understand is what is your thought on कि what went wrong there? They weren't bad people. They were trying to do good things, create good value. But ऑब्वियसली मॉडल में प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है, स्ट्रक्चर में प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है, फॉर्मेट में प्रॉब्लम हो सकती है. व्हाट्स योर थॉट ऑन व्हाई देयर वाज सच अ ह्यूज राइज एंड देन एन इक्वली फास्ट कोलैप्स?
I don't know if I can answer all of those questions, but let me try to let's try to take this bit by bit. What went wrong? I don't think it was necessarily the fault of the entrepreneurs. Their responsibility is to dream big, to try to change the world. So they did, and they, people bought into the idea, backed it. Good for them. I think the only challenge was that the expectations were unrealistic. They were disconnected from the realities on the ground. And the problem with money is that money comes with expectations, right? Expectations of return. But it's not just about how much I'm going to get back when I give you money or how much I'm expecting back. It's about how and when and how quickly, right? And if it comes back with the wrong expectations, it can put tremendous pressure on these businesses and these startups to do things that they maybe shouldn't be doing. Growth hacking sounds cool, but it also sounds very dangerous, right? Hacking doesn't always work out, right? So I think the challenge was that we got too much money too quickly with the wrong expectations, and it also resulted in the eventual deflation. But that's okay. But this leads to my second point. We shouldn't worry. We shouldn't care. If anything, what we should do is celebrate failure. Right? And that's a very weird thing to say within the Pakistani context. They're like, failure, you're going to celebrate it. That's not something we do. We hide and we disappear and we move out of the country, etc. No, celebrate it, right? Because failure is the process through which innovation happens. Failure is the process or the step that you go through to eventually get success. You don't get success on your first try. You have to fail over and over and over again. So if we look at what we're saying as failures of the ecosystem or startups, that's okay. That's a way of how we get to those models that work, right? It's how we eliminate. It's how we learn, right? And the one thing I would say to the entire ecosystem is that sharing the stories of failure does not weaken the ecosystem. What it does is make it stronger, because people know what mistakes to avoid. People know what expectations are incorrect. Right? So it is incredibly important that when failure happens, we do postmortems. And these are not postmortems that need to be written by investigative journalists. These are postmortems that need to be written and told as as stories by the VCs and by the entrepreneurs themselves, because that's when it has credibility. That's when it carries weight. Right? And that's how we end up with a stronger ecosystem.
Yeah, it's interesting because अगर वो उनकी तरफ से खुद आएगा तो क्या सराइयाँ कम होंगी ना, जो कि सब मार्केट में हो रही हैं, और फिर वो हर किस्म की रैंडम स्टोरी अटैच हो जाती है एंड फिर अगेन वो इट्स फजिंग द डेटा. I'm gonna wrap this up. I know that you do have to go to another meeting. मैंने startups के बारे में बहुत कुछ आपसे पूछना था, so I'm hoping to take a promise for round 2 whenever you're next in town.
Sure.
But Raza bhai, this was supremely insightful. More so because I'll be very honest. Consumer के साथ भी I'll be very honest. मेरा दिल नहीं कर रहा कॉन्वर्जेशंस करने का फॉर अ वाइल नाउ. पाकिस्तान के हालात एक जगह पर थे, बट दुनिया के हालात भी एक जगह पर हैं इस वक्त, और सेंटिमेंट इज़ नॉट दैट गुड. अगर मैं जनरली बात करूँ तो नोबडी गिव्स टू शिट्स अबाउट स्टार्टअप्स राइट नाउ. पीपल केयर अ लॉट मोर अबाउट द सोशल साइड ऑफ थिंग्स कि यार मेरा रोटी कपड़ा मकान कहाँ पे होगा, जो बच्चे मर रहे हैं दुनिया में उन बच्चों का क्या होगा, इसका क्या होगा, उसका क्या होगा. एंड सो मेरा जनरली इंटरेस्ट एरिया ये है. मुझे खुद पर्सनली समझ नहीं आ रही थी. एंड सो द कॉन्वर्जेशंस दैट I've done recently, during those conversations and after, मैं खुद बस था कि चलो कर रहे हैं. आज मुझे बहुत मज़ा आया. I just wanted to tell you that.
I appreciate it.
What you're doing is incredible. मुझे फालतू का चूना बिल्कुल भी नज़र नहीं आया और मुझे बहुत कोर नज़र आया, जो कि शायद लॉन्ग टर्म में एक्चुअलाइज करे, बट वो करेगा एटलीस्ट बेस्ड ऑन व्हाट द कॉन्वर्जेशन दैट यू हैड. मैं अगेन यहाँ पर आई टेक दिस मोमेंट टू टॉक अबाउट कि क्या चीज़ें मुझे बहुत ज़्यादा रिसेंटली बहुत करती रही हैं. तो उसमें देयर हैव बीन पीपल who've been on the show, जिन्होंने आके बहुत अच्छी बातें की हैं. आई बीन फेयरली इम्प्रेस्ड. एंड देन फिर उनको अनसेरेमोनियसली फायर करके पता लगा कि उनकी कंपनी जो है वो बहुत बड़ा मैसिव लेवल का चूना लगा रही है. मोस्ट रिसेंटली अगर आप जाके देख लें तो 15 अरब के नंबर्स को 150 अरब पे इन्फ्लेट करके एक डिजिटल बैंक कह लें उसको या माइक्रो फाइनेंस कंपनी कह लें, तो वो आप देख सकते हैं. हमारे पास उसकी पॉडकास्ट भी होगी. तो मुझे वो ऑनेस्टी, इफ़ दैट इज़ ऑनेस्ट, अच्छी लगी, मज़ा आया. एंड आई होप टू हैव दिस कन्वर्सेशन अगेन. I'm going to ask you one last question that I generally ask all of my guests, and I want your insight on that as well. How do you see Pakistan of 2050, 26 years from now, considering this airs in 2024? Knowing what you know now, seeing what you've seen, you've lived in Dubai, you've lived in Oman, and you've lived in Canada, and I'm sure you've traveled all across. दुनिया को देख के, पाकिस्तान को देख के, गूगल में रहते हुए, बहुत सारी डेवलपिंग मार्केट्स को स्टडी करते हुए, पाकिस्तान को 26 साल बाद आप कैसा देख रहे हैं?
It's a complex and deep question. I'll tell you what I know. I think Pakistan will be stronger than it is today. It will be hopefully economically better off. It will be hopefully at a social level more at ease with itself and its own reality. But I don't know what that means for Pakistan within the larger global scheme of things. Because the things that I mentioned, these are all inevitability. These things just take time. And, I had a very interesting conversation recently that, Pakistan it's a baby. It's only 75 years old when it comes to countries, and it's still very, very young. And it's a very large country with tremendous complications. You've got a complex cultural fabric, etc. Maybe the expectations of VCs in Pakistan is wrong, but maybe the expectations of Pakistanis and Pakistan is also wrong, right? Yes, everyone believes the grass is greener on the other side. Everyone believes Pakistan should be further along than we are today. We should not be in the quagmire that we find ourselves repeatedly. But maybe we are where we were supposed to be, because this is one of those paths that we have to cross towards where we're going to be, right? Or where we're supposed to be. And that's okay. I think you can't defeat the idea of Pakistan. So that'll continue to exist. That'll continue to grow, and will continue to strengthen. I don't know if I'll be in Pakistan in 26 years, right? But I fundamentally hope it is a place that my child called home.
That makes a lot of sense, Raza bhai. Thank you so much for coming in, sharing all that insight. I hope टू सी कि वो जो ख़ास का जो अल-फलाह वाली अनाउंसमेंट है आपकी दैट मटीरियलाइजेज इन एन एक्साइटिंग वे, और जो रिटेल को डिजिटाइज करने वाला आपका वो है, आई वांट टू सी दैट इन एक्शन. अगर आप कोई अपनी कंपनी को बोलें कोई वीडियो बना कर डालें, so that we can actually see how it works as well. But thank you so much for coming in.
Definitely will. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And for all of you guys, thank you so much for watching. अगर आपको एपिसोड पसंद आई हो अपने दोस्तों के साथ ज़रूर शेयर करिएगा. नीचे कमेंट सेक्शन में जाके बताएं what do you think about the Pakistani startup ecosystem? What are your thoughts on why startups failed? What are your thoughts on everything that we've shared and discussed in this conversation? Let me know in the comment section below. YouTube वाले लाइक का बटन दबाएंगे कि बड़ी ज़्यादा लोगों तक हमारी कॉन्वर्जेशन पहुंचेगी. ऑडियो प्लेटफॉर्म्स वाले सब्सक्राइब का बटन दबाएंगे, आने वाले एपिसोड से आपको नोटिफिकेशन मिलेगी. But anyways, this was Muzammil Hasan Zaidi. You're watching Thought Behind Things. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.